Welcome. This is live Tea with Miss G, and I'm so honored to not only have gathered some of my favorite people on the planet, but I'm excited that in our chat rooms, on our social media platforms, that folks are turning in and will continue to do so throughout the next hour. The word of the day is pride. And when I think of the word pride, it is a celebration. It is something of elevation and enthusiasm and passion. And I hope that we can take all of those feelings and emotions and charge them into this very courageous conversation, this celebratory conversation that we're going to have over the next hour. I have assembled 4 phenomenal guests, and I am giddy to begin. So what I want to do is introduce our guest, and then I want to dive into the deep end of the pool and talk about what pride means to each and every one of these esteemed guests. I want to start with my first guests. I'll introduce them first, and as we speak, we'll learn a little bit about where they are teaching and what they are doing. But I'm going to do quick introductions so those of you that are watching live know who we've gathered and why. My first guest is Diana Beltrani, and Diana is joining us from Long Island. She works in Nassau County. She is a literacy and social studies coordinator, and I think she's this close to being Dr. Beltrani. So I'm so thrilled that you are joining us. You are a newly minted Freedom Writer teacher. And thank you. I know you're in a different state and a different time zone. So thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
I'm thrilled. Next, I'm very excited to introduce someone in my state and my time zone, and that is the incomparable, the amazing Francisco Lopez. And Francisco is an educator, a dual language immersion educator. And I love that you are coming from Corona down the 91 freeway from Long Beach. And you as well are a Freedom Writer teacher. And I'm thrilled to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Wonderful. On my fabulous screen, I'm just going by the squares that I see in order. We have an amazing educator. As you know, I love a good adjective. But Rachel is coming to us today from her home, her actual childhood home and her home state of Nebraska, but she currently teaches in Alturas, California. You are a social studies teacher, a middle school teacher to boot. And as we all know, middle school kids are kind of wackadoodles. So I love that you were in there corralling those middle school kids. But I also love that you are at home with your family, getting ready for a really important date this August, which we'll talk about. So Rachel Wilkentine, thank you for being with us with your family and at home.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the invite.
And our middle school kids wackadoodles?
That's putting it nicely, I think.
I think you'll agree. I often believe after spending an entire day with middle school kids that deodorant is a suggestion. So
yes, definitely.
I love that you're here. And last on your screen are our fabulous guest, Brian. Brian Solis is the Freedom Writers Chief of Staff. And when we've gathered Rachel, who is a Freedom Writer teacher, and Francisco and Diana as Freedom Writer teachers, Brian, you have the illustrious task of luring all these fabulous folks from their schools, their communities, their states, their continents, their time zones, and promising them 5 days of magic. And then we have to duly deliver. So as someone who has worked with the Freedom Writer teachers from every state in the country and dozens of countries, what is it like to be sitting beside with for and about these Freedom Writer teachers?
It's perfect. It's wonderful. And it's happy. It's good to be back and to have everyone back in one space again. It's awesome.
At some point, I always like to use the term that when the teachers come, that we do jazz hands, and you actually have something special on your nails. So can you show everybody when we do the jazz hands? That's how I actually first met you, Brian.
Yeah.
Today, I think we got pink.
They're pink nails. That's right.
I love it. I love it. I met you, and if you were to go into my phone today, it says Brian Sparkle. I met you when you were a senior in college. I was at my alma mater, your alma mater, UC Irvine,
Right.
and you were standing in line to get this book signed. And I looked down at your nails, and it was love at first sparkle. And so when I instantly connected with your nails, it was before you were rocking your beautiful fuchsia hair. I just knew there was something so joyous, so celebratory about you. And I immediately said, you have to come and be part of our family. So what was that invitation to join our family like?
That invitation was humbling. It was groundbreaking, and it was one of the greatest things ever. I think just being able to join the Freedom Riders and be part of something bigger than myself was really rewarding, eye-opening, and cool, especially somebody who's always wanted to be in the space of education. Now being able to work with educators every single day in my free time was just incredible. So I'm glad that these sparkly nails led me to this path, because it is pure perfection.
I love that. I love that we use the word family, because as we know, words matter and stories matter. And oftentimes, all of us in this educational space, we find kids who are on the other side of feeling that they don't matter, or the words that are used oftentimes are used against them. And so as celebratory as we are and will be in this space, I think it's really important for us to remember that there will be a listener at some point that needs to understand that family can be what we make, that family can be what we choose, and that anyone that is joining us now or in the foreseeable future, that they are not alone. So I want to start with you, Diana. What does that mean when you hear the word "you are not alone"? And had you ever been in a situation growing up, or even when you reached adulthood, where you might have felt alone?
Yeah, I mean, I think for certain, as you're growing up I grew up in the 90s, so now it feels like a long time ago. But it wasn't something that you really spoke about. It wasn't something you saw. Being gay was not something that was openly accepted. I mean, I remember when Ellen DeGeneres came out, and it was a huge deal, and it ruined her career. And you heard things around you like, she shouldn't have done that, or that was a poor decision. And then you're sitting there, no one's talking about you, but they're adjacently talking about you. So yeah, you could feel alone in a room full of people. I've said life has gotten better. It reminds me of the "It Gets Better" campaign when I was growing up. But yeah, it's definitely
And
weird.
and for a young listener who may be turning in today who doesn't know about the "It Gets Better" campaign, can you share a little bit about what that was and how groundbreaking and inclusive that was?
Sure. Yeah, that was a big push during my teen years, and it was in response to the high suicide rates of LGBTQ plus youth. It was in the wake of some really powerful things that happened, both positive and negative. And so it was a way to respond. And there was a lot of celebrities who got in the mix, and seeing them saying that things got better, sharing their stories, which at the time was groundbreaking. It really wasn't something that had been done. So hearing from them that it got better was supposed to make you feel that it got better. And it did to some extent, but it also pointed out that there needed to be a campaign for someone like you.
I love that. Francisco, what I have loved about from the second I met you, it was also love at first sight. You are larger than life. You are unapologetically authentic. And I love that you always say representation is crucial. So for someone who is unapologetically authentic and you believe that representation is crucial, as you were growing up, deciding what your career was going to be and eventually becoming an educator, were you surrounded by advocates and allies who allowed you to be who you are and allow you to immerse yourself with others who were unapologetically authentic?
So I do live by those words, that representation is crucial. Growing up at the end of the 90s, early 2000s, I didn't have any teachers or any figures that I felt I could emulate. And which leads me to another quote that I live by, which you can't emulate what you can't see. So for me, what was able to get me along was having teachers that saw me as more than just my sexuality. They viewed me as a person with many talents, and in addition to those talents, they just celebrated me as I was, without isolating a specific part of my identity.
I'm going to have a whole quote board just for what you tell me. You can't emulate what you can't see. Oh my gosh. And as a child, do you feel that as we have progressed, that society is progressing with us? Are you seeing role models in real time on the shows that you watch and or stream, the rooms that you are in, those with positions of power, so that that not only can you emulate, but those coming behind you also can emulate?
Most definitely. I do feel that there have been people that have been paving the way for those of us that are coming behind them. They are either opening doors or creating new ones and holding them open for those that are following. I do feel hopeful, even just by the ideologies that my students share in the classroom. I feel we're headed in the right direction. I do feel there's a cultural shift. So when they say the children are the future, I wholeheartedly believe it. So yes, I do see a change from when I was growing up. And that's a big reason as to why I live my truth unapologetically. I am who I am authentically in and out of the classroom, because I want little Francisco in sitting in one of those seats to know that there is nothing wrong with them. They are exactly who they were born to be.
That gave me chills and made me a little teary-eyed thinking of a little Francisco. I think all of you on the screens, I have been blessed to know you as adults, and I would have loved to known a little Diana, a little Rachel. So in that ilk, tell me about little Rachel in Nebraska. You know, big Rachel came home, and you came home as a hometown hero. You're this incredible educator. But what was it like to be in one of those chairs in Nebraska as little Rachel?
Not fun, I would say. I grew up in a really conservative Christian household. And I remember the first time that I started thinking maybe something about me was a little different than my peers. I remember having the thought, how do I fix this? Which is, obviously, I've changed my opinion on the matter since then. But it was really tough to not have any representation, to not know anyone, to not see anyone, to not have anyone older than me that was out. And on top of that, be getting a narrative that it was wrong to do that. I remember my older sisters would watch Grey's Anatomy. And the first time that a queer character was on the screen, my dad said, well, we can't watch that show anymore. And he turned it off and we never watched it again. And so that is a lot of ingraining in me. This is wrong. You can't be this. And it's something I still struggle with sometimes today, to get rid of that internalized homophobia.
Wow. Is your father going to be ceremoniously on August 8th celebration?
He will not. I have not spoken to my dad in 5 years. So He is out of my life for a variety of reasons, one of which being that he's not a very accepting man.
And I hope this isn't too tender of a question, but for any of you, maybe we'll start with you, Rachel, when there are people that you have been born and raised with under the same roof, and that roof can be home, it could be school, it could be a place where you pray and worship. What is it like when you are a child and someone that you love desperately you said two things, Rachel, that makes me sad about fixing and wrong. And those were imposed upon you, that there was something that was wrong, and there's nothing wrong about you. In my mind, you are perfectly imperfect, as we all are. But when you use those words, that probably came sadly in your house first, maybe school second, and maybe places of worship. What is that like when you look up to somebody and they are in a position of power, a parent, a principal, a pastor, and they vilify your very being?
I feel like I didn't really come to terms or start thinking about my sexuality until I was like well into my teens. I'm actually like just coming up on my 10-year anniversary of coming out to my mom. And I'm 29, so I feel like that's where, like, some people know when they're babies. And so by the time that I was thinking about it, my parents were already divorced. So my dad, the closest person theoretically in my life that would have a major issue with it, I haven't actually ever come out to him. So I haven't had a super negative experience with somebody that I've known for as long as I've been alive. But I remember when I was a sophomore in high school, a new girl transferred in and she was out. And the way that my peers talked about her was so unsettling. And I didn't have the word, like, I don't even think I knew the word gay until I was well into my teens. But to know that something about me was different than my peers, and to know that they were speaking about this woman in this way, was deeply unsettling. It was even more, I have to keep this locked down, and I can't even think about it, because then maybe they'll see it on me or something. So very, very intense, lot of internal dialogue. A lot of it was negative. So,
Brian, I see you on the screen beside Rachel, and I'm sure that you could reach out and give her a virtual hug.
Yep.
And one thing that I have loved about you is you are so positive. Your family is so positive. Your family of biology and the family that you have made everywhere you go. And when you hear someone that you deeply love, like Rachel, using those words, I've never asked you, but I hope that in your lifetime, that people in your community were more accepting and inclusive of you. And what has been your journey coming up with a label of how you decide to describe yourself, and how you decide to, so as Francisco does, unapologetically everywhere you go, you spread your sparkle. That is your motto. You are spreading your sparkle just by the nails, the hair, the smile, your very essence.
Yeah, I'll say probably maybe very similar to people either watching at home or on the screen, and maybe even a little similar to you too, Rachel. I think the coming out process was tiered and staggered in many different ways. I didn't come out to my family until I was 25, which is interesting, hilarious, but mostly kind of scary. And that was already at the time that hair was pink, nails were done. And so I think what was most important for me was around safety, right? And having a safe place, both in a heart and in a home. And so I didn't come out to my family until a very long time. So one of the things that was challenging and I think difficult, especially like as a teenager, is that I kind of have a little bit of a vocal fry, and I've my hands start flopping around and flying around, and these are mannerisms that somebody might associate with being gay. And so for a lot of my life, it meant try not to talk, try not to stand up too much, try not to move around too much, because people might know, people might be able to figure it out, which was kind of scary, I think. And it was a difficult journey to process, to build friendships, to build connections. And so that's exactly why today, just like Francisco, as I think about a younger Brian, I will proclaim spread your sparkle. It is important to me, especially when working with young people, to make sure that they know that they've always got an ally, they've always got a friend, and above all else, that they can be themselves. And so for myself and being a part of that journey, it was one that I said, you know what, if I need to create my own line, if I need to create my own special brand and hair and identify pink as my power color, although orange is my favorite color, I'll do that. I'll make that happen, because that's what's going to make me happy. That's what's going to make me feel the most safe. And now that I am out, and it's often very visible as I'm walking through airports or walking around the store, I get a lot of double glances. I get a lot of double takes of, is that really pink hair? And I'm proud of it. I'm very proud of who I am. Rachel asked me earlier, since I met you last year, have you been pink this whole time? Have you tried different colors? And I will say for the viewers, I have been pink this last year, but I've started dyeing my hair about 6 years ago, and my pink hair helps keep me happy, helps keep me excited for what's to come, and help build that safe space for others.
Diana, you are the elder statesperson in this group, self-proclaimed, because you have this lifetime of wisdom. And what I love about what you are able to provide for the other four is you're in this beautiful, loving marriage. And I'd love for you to talk about, as a child, did you think marriage was possible? And to have gone to the other side. There was a time where it was not legal to marry someone in this country of the same sex. So I'd love for you to take us back, because you have done it and you are so blissfully in love. I love the photos that you sent from your recent trip to Hawaii. You both were glowing, and it wasn't just the sunshine, it was internally, it was an absolute glow. So talk about that transition of being a kid, understanding that the simple fact of Ellen just announcing who she was and being canceled and fired to where you are now.
Wow, it's been a very long journey. So I guess I always knew something was a little different, probably in middle school, but I came out really young, so and not on my own accord. So I was, seeing a girl who was openly out, and long and short of it, it kind of came back around. And my mother, who I love dearly, animately denied that I could possibly be a lesbian when the woman from town approached her and said that I had a girlfriend. But my mother came to my defense and said I was straight. Now she loves my wife dearly, and it's been a long time since then. But that was the beginning of it. And I think for me, I'd never considered getting married as an option. I never dreamed of the dress or it just wasn't a thing. Like, I didn't think of it. And so I got myself mixed up in other ways and bad crowds, and kind of got myself trying to find out who I was and where I belonged. So it's kind of complicated, the coming out piece when it wasn't socially acceptable, trying to find ways to kind of, I don't know, almost mask that by acting out in other ways, which then got me sent away to Pennsylvania for a while. So that was an entertaining part of my history. Came back, went to alternative high school. But I think the biggest piece of it was, I was always who I was. I always, was open about who I was, not necessarily to everybody, because you have to be safe. And that's another thing, is you never come out once. You always come out. You're constantly coming out. When my wife and I moved back to Long Island and got a house, and we had to introduce ourselves to our neighbors, every time you say it, you like hold your breath. You're like, oh, how are you going to respond? So there's that piece to it. But so coming out, dating, getting in a long-term relationship, and then the whole marriage thing, wasn't legal growing up. It was, the idea that it would be was like crazy. So I remember when it was first legalized state by state, and I remember my brother calling me, and he's like, "Are you excited?" I'm like, "No, I don't know. I'm so confused. I never had to think about this." And then we did get married when it wasn't legal across all of the United States. So it was legal in certain states, New York being one of them. Been with my wife for 21 years. So 12 years ago, we got married this June, or this July rather. But there was a time when we'd go travel, and we had to make sure that where we traveled through, it was either, pardon me, states that were where gay marriage was legal. Now it's just marriage, but gay marriage is legal. And we had to bring our license with us, our marriage license. Not that it would do anything, because if we got into a car accident in Texas, it didn't matter. She was just my friend. I couldn't make any decision for her. Now our families are very loving towards both of us, so they would let us make decisions, but not every relationship is like that. So unfortunately, we've traveled a long road. Now, I'm the cool gay aunt. My niece introduced me as that the other day. I'm like, oh, we're saying that. Okay. Not something I thought I'd see in my lifetime, but I'm the cool gay aunt now. So
I I I'm looking at you, Francisco, because a lot of things that Diana said, there was some nodding and there was acknowledgement, and I love the affirmations. And when Diana talked about that, it's not just a one and done. When you come out, it is constant and continual. And Diana, when you said that you held your breath, so Francisco, for you, who every moment of every day you use your truth, you live your truth. What is that like for someone like yourself that every day you are proud of who you are unashamed and should not have any shame around that. But what is that like on a daily basis when you walk into a new room and introduce yourself or meet a group of students for the first time? What is that like when you feel like that you want to allow those people to come into your identity?
So Diana did bring up a very valid point, which is security. Despite the fact that I am who I am, regardless of what circle I'm entering, I still need to do what I need to do in order to remain alive, because I do have to be cognizant that not everyone is going to be okay with who I am. And that can manifest in physical harm. So I do constantly, and I feel that a lot of people that identify as gay or LGBT, we do have to do, make decisions constantly, minute by minute, in how we navigate the world around us. So in my classroom, I it's my own little microcosm. So in that space, I know I can control what is happening. I can foster and nurture a culture of acceptance, tolerance, diversity, so that hopefully whatever I am, whatever I'm building in the classroom, it finds its way out into the world. So hopefully one day there will be others that won't constantly have to police themselves.
I hope those that are watching are feeling what I'm feeling every time you speak, Francisco. I have these tears welling in my eyes, and they're tears of, I'm so proud of you. You're like an orator. And it's very melodic and soothing. And I love the words that you're choosing, like fostering and nurturing. Those come from a place that are very loving as a child, maternal and paternal. And, sadly, some kids don't have that maternal or paternal love that makes them feel safe and secure. They might not grow up in a space that, like the microcosm that you're creating, the world is not always that nurturing. So thank you for the words that you choose and the world that you make. While you were speaking, I want to do a shout out to a Freedom Rider teacher who we put it on the screen, Tracy Weber, a Freedom Rider teacher in Hemet, wanted you all to know that you are strong, amazing, beautiful people. I love those terms of affirmation. I love those adjectives. We have a question that was submitted via a video, and it is for you, Miss Rachel. And I love that this question was deliberately from you, from a Dr. Christina Garcia Rovetta. And so I'd like to put that question on the screen. And following this very poignant and profound question that is directed at you, I'd love for you to answer it.
This question is for Rachel. I was just wondering if you might talk about how it feels that, in about a month we're getting married. But at one point in your life, you didn't think that you would ever get married. You weren't okay with being queer. You didn't think this stage in life was going to be one that you got to experience. And so how it feels that now you are experiencing it, and what words of advice you might have for either your younger self or students that you have that are currently going through kind of their own identity crisis.
I love that that question was directly to you from one of the most important, if not the most important person in your life, Rachel. So please answer that beautiful veterinarian who had that question for you.
Of course, yeah. So like I said, I was coming to terms with my sexuality about 10 years ago, and it was my sophomore year of college. And that's, everybody changes their major a bajillion times in college. And I had just changed mine to teaching. And I didn't really know if I wanted to stay with it or if I was going to move to something else. But I was struggling with my identity at this point in time. And I can remember a very distinct series of processes of like, okay, I think I might like women. Okay, I think I might want to be with a woman, but I can't be with a woman. I'll still marry a man because I want to have kids. Okay, I cannot marry a man. That is not going to go well. But I still want kids, so I'll be a teacher. And so for probably a good 2 years of my life, I was getting my degree to be a teacher. I was, coming to terms with being single for the rest of my life and never dating anyone and never hugging anybody and what that would mean and look like, until eventually I was like, wait a minute, this is crazy. There's nothing wrong with me. And thus began, the last 10 or so years of my life, which have been full of joy and heartbreak, but mostly joy. Specifically joy right now as I get to marry that incredible, beautiful woman that was just on the screen in just over a month. So it is like kind of Diana had said earlier, I wasn't a kid that was like, where's my Pinterest board and what's the wedding dress and the flowers? I didn't think about marriage. And probably because I knew I didn't want to marry a man. So the fact that I get to marry an incredibly caring, compassionate, intelligent, beautiful woman is amazing to me. And to answer the second half of her question, what would I tell my younger self? I feel like there are a lot of people that say it gets better, live through now. But I didn't have a horrible childhood. I just was struggling with my identity. So I would tell my younger self, there's nothing wrong with you, right? My life wasn't super horrible, but I thought that I was wrong, right? So I would tell myself, there's nothing you need to change.
Wow. I told you that Francisco makes me get very weepy, and I am finding the tears not just welling, but flowing, because I remember meeting you at a teacher's conference in Monterey. And I remember sharing stories with you. I was with my colleagues, Nico and Joshua, and proudly professing that I am ordained. And the first wedding that I ordained was to two Freedom Rider teachers, one of whom has been on our live, Johnny Munoz. And that must have stuck with you. And then you became a Freedom Rider teacher. So the fact that you and your amazing fiance asked me to officiate your wedding is such a blessing and such a gift. I'm so honored. I'm so humbled, and I want to do it right. And so even if you didn't have a Pinterest then, I think this day is going to be so celebratory, so filled with love. And what is something that you would like to tell all of those young girls, that marriage is possible and it is within reach and it is very, very attainable?
Yeah, I mean, I think that in a lot of societal constructed things, marriage means a lot of different things. And so what I would tell young people is marry your best friend, marry somebody that you want to laugh with over coffee in the morning and look at the stars at night with. And that it's not something that is archaic or patriarchal or loveless. It doesn't have to be, right? It's not duty bound. So marry your best friend and you'll spend every minute happy.
Diana, is there a piece, you've been with your wife, started dating her in 2005, so 21 years that you've been in a loving relationship, 12 of which married. Is there any advice that you'd like to give her, since you are now someone who's made it and people look up to you?
Don't ever deny her. So don't use but not in that sense. Like, don't use the word. I used to use the word partner a lot, and friend, and everything that wasn't the word girlfriend or wife. So don't deny that she exists, or play the pronoun game where, I don't know. I spent a lot of time doing that I guess I hadn't. And I think I mentioned this to you, Miss G, about the students and coming out. I just remember I had a student one time, and if she listens to this, which she will, because we're still close. She was a real tough kid, and she was very quiet, and she really wouldn't speak up a lot. And it was like my mission I was a 24-year-old teacher. I was like, I'm going to help this kid, and I did, and we're still very close. But she came into my classroom one day, and she closed the door and she said, "You need to tell me if you're gay." And I said, "What? I don't, what?" I was like, "I can't." And I was in an all girls public school, and now I'm freaking out because I meticulously used partner and other, anything I could. But she looked at me and she had tears in her eyes, and she said, "Because if you are and you won't admit it, then that means there's something wrong with me." And I said, whew. So in that moment, I had to just own it. It was tough. I remember calling my principal and thinking I was going to get fired, but she's engaged now to her beautiful fiance, and she and her fiance will be getting married. So just don't ever deny them.
And I understand, Diana, you also officiate weddings. So maybe
I do.
you'll get a call from a former student at some point that says, "Would you do us the honor?" And you heard some words, Brian, I'm going to go to you, that Dr. Christina used. And one of the words was queer. And I'd love for you to talk about the power of words when people identify, however and whomever and whenever they tend to identify themselves. Can you talk about the power of people choosing the words in which they want to be identified by?
Sure, absolutely. I'd say words are so powerful. Words are things that we create and that we use and that help define. So I feel like the words that you hear people using, whether it be partner, whether it be wife, whether it be fiance, boyfriend, anything people use, even queer, I think it's really important to try matching that. If folks are talking about the LGBTQIA plus community, do your best to remember all those different letters, because that really goes a long way. Words help define, and labels help define parameters that people set, but also help shape, how they're perceived in their society or in that community that they see you in. I'll say for myself, I identify as gay, and so if somebody were to use the word queer, I'd say, "Okay, great, let's help use that." If especially when working with a young person, sometimes the word queer might be something that's a road to understanding a little bit more about where they fit in the community. And sometimes queer is used as an umbrella term that represents so many different people. So I'd say that in using and thinking about words, language is really, really powerful on both sides of it, right? The language we use, or maybe that we don't use, could also be really hurtful. So if somebody says that they're queer and you continue to use a different label on them, that just hurts their self-esteem. And I think many of us could maybe speak to being in those environments before where somebody didn't use a word or intentionally used a word that wasn't very kind, and it just hurts and it's not necessary. So I'd say when in doubt, use the language that people use, and it's going to help go a long way to be more inclusive and just make everyone a little happier.
I love that. Francisco, we know that you're an educator, an incredible educator, and one of your sister communities had been in the public spotlight internationally, not just here in California, but internationally, for a young student who identified as trans and wanted to participate in sports. And so I know that you know of the student, and some of your colleagues have actually had teams that participated with the student. So can you share a light on this young person's journey? And I know with your insight, I just hope that we could put some real compassion and empathy around why this student chose sports as a love language and a lifeline and oftentimes a survival.
So I've heard about the situation, and this particular student, they identify as female. So they're transgender, male to female. And a lot of the, I guess we can call it scandal, and I'll air quotes, it was surrounding the fact that the student was going to be participating in sports with cisgender females. And for those that aren't familiar with the term cisgender, it means that your biological sex aligns with the gender that was assigned to you at birth. So a lot of parents were concerned because they felt that their daughters were at risk of being harmed by this student, even though the student, all they were trying to do was play sports just like any other student. From what I've heard, this student is one of the sweetest individuals. Their passion is simply playing their sport. So I think it's very important that we humanize anyone that's part of the or that identifies within the LGBTQIA plus community, and just let children be children. Let children be children. They want to live their lives just like any other person, and I think they should be able to do that without having to worry about people trying to criminalize their existence.
You know, in this particular district, I was so excited to be able to reach out to both the superintendent and assistant superintendent and recruit educators from the Harupa School District to join our Freedom Rider family. So I'm so proud that in our July Institute, we will have 2 educators joining us from Harupa who have loved on this child and tried to create safe spaces, both on and off the field and in classes. And even though there was sadly a very negative stereotype placed upon this child, I'm just so excited that people that are walking the walk and protecting this child are going to be joining our family. I want to read something, speaking of family, from an original Freedom Rider. Sarah Capistrant, an OG Freedom Rider, just wrote in the chat room, "I love these stories. You are all so strong. And Diana, you are right. The name you give your spouse matters." And I love that Sarah Capistrant was not only able to live her truth as an original Freedom Rider, but her story in the Freedom Rider's Diary was about coming out her senior year and making that existential decision about going to a religious college that she might have to suppress and deny, or living her truth. So I love that you are in this space right now, Sarah. I love that I've known you since you were 14. I love that you have gotten married and had children and are here to be an advocate and an ally. Rachel, I want to ask you a question about those that are not allies and advocates. I know that in the state of Nebraska, as in with other communities, that they still practice conversion therapy. And for those that are watching and listening, can you describe what conversion therapy is and maybe shed some light on your feelings about conversion therapy?
I haven't looked up a definition, so please, people out there, feel free to correct me. But to my understanding, it is the purposeful attempt to take someone who is gay and make them not gay. And I think that I've heard stories of that involving like therapy, like going and talking to somebody. or like summer camp, like you get sent away to camp and you are left in the hands of those people. I've heard stories of like electroshock therapy. So I think what it looks like can vary a lot between the intensity of it, but all of it is harmful. When I was in college, I was dating a girl at the time who was a page for our legislature, and she would come home and talk about how they were discussing whether or not in the unicameral, if they were going to ban it or not in 2017, 2018. And people had come from Texas to talk about how important it was that we keep conversion therapy. And I remember being so appalled that people felt this strongly that being gay was wrong. So I have never experienced it myself. I think maybe some people would argue that growing up as conservative as I did, I was in my own kind of conversion therapy. But it's not good. It's bad.
Have any of you ever heard the term like praying the gay away? Has it ever been something that someone said from a pulpit or with an open Bible?
I didn't hear specifically pray the gay away, but I did have relatives who talked about one of my other cousins who is gay, talking about, well, I hate the sin, but I love the sinner, which really gets you. The more you think about it, the worse it is. Very similar idea.
So Brian, when you hear that, and it's taking something that feels biblical and feels very sanctimonious and righteous, and as Rachel pointed out, it's a put down. So when you hear something like that, I love. Can you rephrase that, Rachel?
I love the sinner, hate the sin, or something similar.
How do you interpret that, Brian, when people try to weaponize the Bible against you?
Yeah, I'd say it's inappropriate. It's terrible, and it just hurts, right? I think when using that language, and Erin, as soon as I think of Pray the Gay Away, I think of a story that we worked on in Dear Freedom Writer, using that exact phrase, and a young student author had written about how she prayed the gay away, and the pain that just comes with that is so sad to hear and to imagine for somebody that doesn't need to happen, because for so many young people, especially when thinking about their religion, it's their home, it's their identity, it's their family that loves them. So in using something else to say, because of this is why I don't like you, or I hate the sin that you're doing, as you said, Rachel, it just hurts, and it allows somebody to displace the pain away from maybe the family member or the person who said that, and say, oh, well, it's because of this that I have these feelings. I think it's really just cowardly. It really is somebody saying, I'm going to use this to deflect and to push away, when really I want to put this pain on somebody. So somebody who's a member of the LGBTQ+ community may feel that and receive that pain, and they don't know where it's coming from, right? They may blame other things, and internally they just take that. So I think, when in doubt, it's good to just be direct. It's good to, when hearing things like that about you need to pray the gay away, sometimes I think an understanding that maybe that's not the right path, simply because of the fact that it's somebody else or something else that's saying that. It's important to remember how you feel and how you can take a path forward to make yourself feel more loved and build those connections that bring more warmth into your life.
I love that. I love that Sarah yet again wanted to share something. Sarah was one of my original freedom writers, as I said earlier. So I've known her since she was 14. And she wrote, I came out to Miss G at 17. She was the first one I came out to. And as I shared, her story was in the original Freedom Writer's Diary. And I knew upon putting those stories together and binding it into the book, that we risked the fact that someday, someplace, our book would be banned. And lo and behold, the Freedom Writer's Diary has been banned. It's been banned in many states, many schools, taken out of libraries. And Diana, you are a literacy guru. You know, you were a former English teacher, now you're in administration. And so what are your thoughts about when you look at the banned book lists? So many of the books that are banned in our country are books that are trying to give young people advocacy and soft spaces to land. So many of the books that are being attacked across our country have protagonists or storylines that are exploring, elevating, and celebrating the LGBT plus community. So what are your feelings about that? Because that is your lane in literacy.
Yeah, no, it's been very interesting to be on this side of the bookshelf with all of the different companies and having the power now to say to them where is the representation. Where as a kid I didn't know how to word it, or I didn't have the seat at the table to really even do so. But I always laugh when I hear that argument with the books, because I don't know about you guys, but I read a lot of straight books and I watched a lot of straight movies, and none of it fixed me. And I'm using air quotes. So I just, it's always something that it's a fear of the unknown. And I think just this trying to protect kids from something that they don't need to be protected from, because they're only harming them in the long run. I mean, my friends and I still make jokes about we get our one gay movie a year around the holiday time. But it's true. And you know, there's some truth to it, that there's more representation now in, you know, different areas, and it's not always the comic relief in the book or in the movie. But it is still, you know, a very big thing with banning books. And I'm lucky to be in New York where it's not as prevalent. But I go to a lot of conferences in a lot of places, and I've seen a lot of bins that say identity on them and have gone right to them. And I'm the first one to name it and make everybody uncomfortable when there's nobody that looks like me in there. So I think we just have to keep calling it out, because little Diana would have really wanted that. She found one book and read it 700 times.
Francisco, earlier you proudly used the word visibility. And I love that you're very proud of your culture, your heritage. And as a dual language immersion teacher, do you ever feel that sometimes religion is something that people might use against you in both the classroom and in the way that you choose to be very visible? And going back to your beautiful quote earlier about representation is crucial. So in your family and in your community and how you identify, how do you deal with that when people may not feel inclusive, may not feel safe?
So I understand that historically religion has been weaponized to otherize those that don't fall in line with what the expectations are socially. I personally, I've come to terms with my own spirituality, and being Mexican American, religion is a big part of my cultural background. It's very deeply enmeshed. So I needed to find a way that made sense for me. And I chose to go the route of love. So I choose to believe that God made me. He created me exactly the way that I was meant to be. And that's what I choose to put out into the world. So even if there are people that don't agree and feel that I don't, that I am a sinner per se, I can't change people's minds. I can only control the way that I view others, the way that I carry myself in the world. Therefore, I made the conscious decision that I'm going to operate with love in every way, shape, or form.
Mm. You're doing it to me again, Francisco. You're making me have all those beautiful feelings. And I hope those that are watching and listening, I love just seeing the faces on the screen. We're all nodding. You know, Brian, we are in this magical place at the Freedom Riders headquarters where we get to lead with love, where we get to celebrate the best of humanity. And 2 weeks ago, we were at the Museum of Tolerance, and each of the teachers were given a name tag with a demarcation of somebody who went to the concentration camps during the Holocaust. And every single color represented a group that had a label, that had an identity. And there was a label for people who were homosexual. And that hit a lot of people in that room really hard. You know, oftentimes we think of these travesties or these genocides, and we think it's other people at other times. So as somebody who does have the ability to lead with love and celebrate the best of humanity from learning from the past, what do you want us to learn from the past so that we're not doomed to repeat it?
I'd say one of the greatest lessons we can learn is how much pain we can inflict on others intentionally and inadvertently. And so I think it's really, really important to, like you said, lead with love, lead with kindness, assume best intent, and when you can, make the world just a little bit brighter, because there's so many difficult things that people go through every single day, whether we're in a classroom, whether we're in a shopping mall, whether we're on a road trip, right? There's just so many things that we don't know what people are going through. So if we can be a little bit kinder, be a little bit nicer, it's going to make the world just a little bit better, because there are some really, really painful things that are happening. We've seen it in history books. We see it in the news. And so my best piece of advice is be kind, be happy, and when in doubt, share that with others, because it's really, really, really going to make things better. And hopefully what we can see is if everyone does one thing just a little bit better, then the world will get a little bit better. So just take that step and build intentionality in everything you do, but mostly how you can bring kindness.
Oh, I love it. Rachel, there's nothing more loving than getting married to your beautiful fiance. And I'm so excited, but I also know that there was a sense of urgency for you. We live in a political climate that you are afraid, potentially politically, that at some point there could be a Supreme Court decision that could take away that right, take away the legality of what Diana has already done, what you were going to do on August 8th. So talk about that in 2026, that sense of fear, that's something that is now a law, that it could be taken away.
Yeah. So I've been engaged for just about a year now, and my one of my sisters is a lawyer, and I remember in the first couple months of our engagement, we talked with her on the phone a lot about, well, if they, reverse the Supreme Court decision, what other forms do we need to have so that we can have the same powers, like the ability to make medical decisions out of state and those kinds of things. We talked about not getting married, because what if that put us on a list somewhere? Both decided that we were very publicly out, so that didn't work super great. But that was definitely a consideration. And with our wedding coming up in a month, neither one of us is going to change our last name because of what's happening with voting, or what might happen with voting. So I think that there are lots of feelings, and not all of them are joy. And that is sad to me, that I'm not only feeling joy about my upcoming wedding, and that our political climate makes me have to think logically and rationally and do worst case scenarios and those sorts of things.
Diana, we talked earlier about, we live in a very polarizing and political time. And we also live in this like manosphere that's like hyper masculinity. And I'm curious for you, what do you feel when young kids are exposed to that hyper masculinity and that manosphere that tries to minimize anyone that's not a heterosexual male. Because you are an educator, and I'm sure that kids oftentimes on their gadgets, on their computers, the things that they stream and watch and listen to can be very, very negative, and it's frightening. So, what is your advice for that manosphere? We saw it on the White House lawn at the fight, where someone grabbed the microphone and an MMA fighter and declared, wrongly so, that Michelle Obama was a man, and no one walked that back. There was no condemnation. You are someone that has power. You are someone in a position of authority. I think you are one of those people that wants people to take accountability. So share your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, I think you named it. By not doing anything, it's a decision. So by staying quiet, by not addressing it, by letting it slide, you're saying millions of things by not doing anything. So I think one of the biggest pieces of advice is naming it. And people always tell me I'm unapologetically myself. And I think it's taken a long time to get to this point. And it's taken a long time for me to be anxious about the response of others, because I'm at a point now where I know the value of naming something is far greater than a bit of uncomfortable moments. I've got a lot of nephews and one niece. So that's something that I'm consciously being very honest with them about. I mean, even therapy, I talk to them about going to my therapist and like just trying to name things that may have had at some point some stigmas to them. And I remember the little one used to love painting his nails, and now he's at a point where he doesn't want to do that anymore because it's not something that, is necessarily seen as masculine. And just kind of helping them navigate it, but naming it, not being an idle standing by and allowing kids to use gay as a derogatory word, or, use other terms that sometimes make these resurgence. So yeah, I think naming it and not turning a blind eye.
I love that. We started this live with the word pride, and I spoke it into existence of celebration. So I want us to have that moment where we can celebrate the best of those of you who are unapologetically yourselves. And what I'd like you to do is I want you to think of something that when you think of being yourself, that someone surprised you, someone that you didn't think was an ally or an advocate came to your defense or said something so complimentary, or something in your family might have showed up at a wedding or a ceremony. So I'd love for each of you to kind of think about one of those moments that someone can learn to look for those people with smiles, to look for those allies. I'm going to start with you, Brian, because I have loved traveling the world with you. Recently, we were on our way to New York. And we saw this woman with her bright purple hair, and you had just come from the salon with your bright pink hair. You were like spirit animals, and you both were like heat-seeking missiles. And just watching the two of you acknowledge each other and talk about the world. So I'm going to start with you about what is a memory or a moment that is the best of humanity, is the best of someone or something celebrating who you are for who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I love that woman. She was great. She was hilariously awesome and bright and pink and purple and pink. I will say probably pretty similarly. This happened actually just last week. I was taking a work call, walking around the neighborhood, just relaxing. And I had these neighbors that stopped me. It was a family. It was mom, a dad, and a little girl who was maybe like 7 years old. And I had AirPods in. So I was walking, I was doing my thing. And they like waved me down. And I was like, yeah, are you good? What's going on? And they said, we just want to say, we're so glad we have a pink-haired neighbor in our neighborhood. I said, what? Okay, thank you. I didn't think of that. And they like, the mom tapped her daughter's shoulder and she said, do you see that? How cool is, and the girl was just beaming ear to ear. And she was like, whoa. And I said, well, have a great day. Like, that's awesome. Yes, you got a pink-haired friend in the neighborhood. But I think it's the small things, and I know we talk about my pink hair a lot, but I think it's because that is my outward projection of my pride. But it's the small things that really go a long way. That was just really, really sweet and caught me off guard, but reminded me that just by being present, being available, and being around in my neighborhood, it helps set a role model for somebody, even if it was that 7-year-old child that I had never met before.
I love that. Francisco, we often say what happens at the Freedom Writers Institute stays at the Freedom Writer Institute. So we got to see some of the most joyous moments with you. And they're treasured, and they're part of that. Those that were in the room got to see it live and in real time. But I know that you probably have so many moments like Brian where it was pure joy, pure love. And can you share one of those love is love moments with us?
So for me, it actually happened yesterday. I have a younger cousin who came out to me, and he said that he felt proud to have an older cousin that could kind of show him how to navigate the world, how to be his most authentic self. And that just, it brought me a lot of joy, because, and at the same time, it was bittersweet because it reminded me that I didn't have that growing up. So being able to be a system of support for a family member, it means the world to me. It means that I'm doing something right. And in the classroom, it's happened multiple times where students, they don't always verbalize what how much they appreciate their teachers, but sometimes it can be something as simple as a smile when they walk into your classroom, a smile when you say something that they find amusing, and yeah. So like I said yesterday, that was it was a very touching moment for me.
I love that affirmation. Diana, you're so glowing from what probably was like a second honeymoon with you and your wife in Hawaii. Was there anything that happened when you two lovebirds were there? The photos you sent were spectacular, but I'm curious if you have an example of that joyous, celebratory love is love is love.
Yes, I have many from the trip. I think the one though that, and this goes back to what I said to Rachel earlier about not denying your partner and your wife, but I went surfing, and which I did do well. Brian, I surfed for a while. So there was a young girl who came out the second time with us, and young girl, she was in her early 30s, but I had said something about my wife, and I could see her face just changed, and she had a million questions. And I was like, all right. And then as we're paddling out, she's like, it's so nice to see a queer person who's open about it. It makes me feel more comfortable being queer myself. And I was like, oh, just like opening up and saying who you are and mentioning it, even in passing. You don't know how much that means to people to just see representation, even just, out in the middle of Hawaii. But other than that, I mean, we did a lot of awesome things. I will say that we made it to the road to Hana and back with still married. So that's good.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah, but we get to enjoy all the same things that every other couple does in a 21-year long marriage. And just, it's great. It's nice to be able to do that. I never thought this would be my future. So it's great to be living it.
Rachel, I'm so excited. Putting that you and Diana together was like Wonder Twin Powers activate. I don't know how I'm going to make it through a single verse at your wedding. The second I see you in your dress, the second I hear the music, all of that ambiance and beauty is going to just be a wave rushing over all of us. So I would love, even though you've had some bumps and bruises along the way, you both said yes, and you're doing this in a very big and a bold way. and you are home in Nebraska right now, plotting and planning what this is going to look like, this celebration on August 8th. So is there a story that you want to share about planning this wedding that has been joyous, that is the best representation that love is love is love, that could let all of us be really excited and live vicariously?
Definitely. I'm actually, if it's okay with you, going to tell the story of how Christina proposed to me, because that is very gay. So we were on vacation in San Diego, and she planned for us to go to this little tiny hole-in-the-wall bookstore that's owned by a queer couple. And we get there, and it's super small, not like smaller than an apartment, very tiny place. And there's only one person in there and only one worker. And I'm looking at books, and she goes, "Oh, have you seen this one?" And hands me a journal that she's been keeping since we've been dating for like a couple months. And it's all of the things that she's thought about me and all of the times that she missed me and pictures of what we've done, just real waterworks material. She got down on one knee and she did her whole proposal. And I said yes, and it was magic and joyous. And lo and behold, the worker recorded the whole thing, and she hadn't been asked. And our song was playing on the speakers, and the people that own the bookstore were like, "Will you post and tag us?" And so just the overwhelming support of a stranger to capture that moment for us, for the owners of the bookstore that Christina reached out to say, "Absolutely, do it, share it, we want to be a part of it," was incredible. Felt very like normal, like this is what regular people do, and it's reasonable that two women are getting married and nobody's surprised by that. So that was a really very joyous moment in my life. A lot of crying. So
Oh, well, I think there's not a dry eye listening to you, nor will there be at your actual wedding. I want to end with something that Francisco had talked about earlier. It was so sweet when you said little Francisco. And I think of all of the younger selves. We are in the business of educating, and there are kids right now that sadly feel very alone. A book might have been banned in their library. A teacher may have been fired for being their authentic self. A pastor or reverend might have said something that made them feel wrong and or different. And so that little Francisco is going to be a metaphor for someone out there who can look on the screen or put in their earbuds, listen to the cadence of your voice, and feel okay. That somehow, some way, as Diana so profoundly reminded us, it does get better. And that there can be these moments, as Rachel, where you said, it's normal. Wouldn't it be wonderful if every moment of joy for everyone was normal and it wasn't weaponized? So I want each of you to think of a younger version. It could be a little Francisco, you, or it could be someone that's in a dark corner right now, someone who needs to find their way into your class, into your world, into your audio waves. I want to start with you, Diana. Is there something that you could share with a little Diana?
A lot of things I wish I could share with her. But I would say the biggest thing is, if other people are so disturbed and upset about love, you have to take it from where it's coming, and it's not about you, and it's about them. So if you keep living your life and being happy, in the end, their response to you says a million more things about their life and their concept of love than what it does for you. So let's get better and be yourself.
I love that. I love when Francisco clocks it or does his small claps. Sweet Rachel. I want you to pick either a middle school student in your class or little Rachel in Nebraska. And I'd like for you to speak directly to a younger self.
Yeah, I think I would tell my younger self, and what I tell my kids today is there's nothing wrong with you. And it's perfectly okay to support humanity. And it's not okay to belittle humanity for people being who they are and what they can't change. But as it gets better, there's also nothing wrong with who you are right now. There's no need to change yourself. So
I love that. Are we going to clock that, Francisco? There we go. Sweet Brian, with your smile, with your wit, and your sparkle, I'd love you to speak to a younger version of a Brian, or you deal with so much youth today. Just be an order to one of those younger versions.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would say spread your sparkle. Be yourself, love others, and take up space. Take up space because the world needs more of you. Even if you might be scared, even if you may not want to show it, build that space for yourself and tell the world how cool you are, because you really are.
Okay, Francisco, you've had me on the verge of boohoo sobbing the entire time we've been in this space. So I'm expecting some tears right now. I'm so proud of the screen that I see. I'm so impressed by all of your wisdom, every single one of you. So I'm elevating you, Francisco, to be that order, to be on that pulpit or that platform. Hopefully when you're speaking, you'll pierce some of those politicians who need to hear what you have to say, or people with power, because I believe that when you speak, it is worth listening to. So whoever you envision speaking to, hopefully we all can eavesdrop, listen in, and learn.
So I want to leave you with this. It's a quote from a character in Glee, Sue Sylvester, played by Jane Lynch. She said, "There's not much difference between a stadium full of adoring fans and a group of people screaming abuse at you. At the end of the day, it's all just noise. Convince yourself they are cheering for you, and one day they will. Keep being yourself. You are who you are. You're beautiful. Don't let anyone dim your glow. Okay, and just be you. You're a masterpiece. Never forget that."
Wow. Such wisdom, such eloquence, such a celebration. I'm so honored that all of you immediately said yes. You immediately said yes, and I'm humbled. I'm honored, and I want to share. I think all the folks that are watching and sending in comments and questions, you've made them better advocates. You'll make them better teachers. I think parents that are watching will want to go and give their sons and daughters a squeeze. I hope they honor them by calling them by the names of their choice, using the pronouns that make them feel special, unique, and seen. And I love that all of you are being seen, all of you are being heard, and all of you are celebrated. So thank you for joining us. I can't wait to get this out in the world in the podcast form as well. And for everybody in the chat room, thank you for your comments, your questions, your suggestions. To all of our Freedom Writers, Freedom Writer teachers, our allies, our advocates, thank you for celebrating with us for our monthly Pride edition. Thank you all.
Happy Pride.